There's lots of ways with regard to infrastructure, immovable property, the generation of cash flow off these new types of property. But I would not neglect the basics. I mean, shopping centres have faced all sorts of changes over the years. There was some sense that online shopping might be long-term structurally changing in respect of retail. Retail, now the omni-channel experience is prevalent everywhere. So trends change quickly. And we think we're coming back globally. We're certainly seeing it in the South African market, but we've also been raising equity in Europe. We think that we're coming back into a period of the cycle when real estate-derived cash flows enjoy tailwinds and not headwinds. And when that happens, capital, particularly big sources of capital, the big pension funds, the big aggregators of capital, they look for exposure to real estate, and REITs then come into their own for that period of the cycle because the capital is well priced, the real estate opportunities abound, and REITs as a platform for matching capital to opportunities, they come into their own. Thanks, Ruth.
Thank you, Andrew. And you've talked about a lot of things. I've had investment thesis. I've had a nice word that I like, democratization of ownership of property. Allow me to bring in Peter into the conversation. And Peter, I want to give you a two-part question because I heard you saying that you cannot read timber. And my experience tells me that you can read anything. And Jeff said it yesterday. And I heard it from REIT that anything is readable. So my question to you is based on governance. You also talked about governments and governance. So what are the opportunities within social good and governance space for REITs to thrive? And what are also the challenges that stopping REITs from thriving and from, just from the social good ethics and governance space? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges that you see?
Okay, thank you, Ruth. Yes, can anything be reachable? As I say, anything real estate, and I would say something developed, built, constructed, structured, not something grown, so not crops. I think that's where I am, not crops, but things like storage, warehousing. I talk about markets. I know you talk about shopping centers. How about markets? And that's one of the big areas in Kenya where county governments are really struggling to assist citizens to put things together where they can actually market their produce. Markets are a big area, maybe not as sophisticated as retail centers, but they would be retail outlets that can actually be rated. Now, around what are the opportunities for improving? Where can government come in? What can government do for society? I think there are myriad opportunities where government can input to ensure that citizens end up benefiting. That democratization issue that Andrew has talked about. I think the first thing must be that issue about tax. Government tells us that they collect tax for our benefit because without people there is no government. Therefore, if the people consider that a tax exemption would be beneficial to the people, the democratization of the property space, then government ought to do that. REITs worldwide enjoy tax incentives to different degrees. So I think it's our government looking at the growth of our REIT space and saying we could accelerate the growth if we added a few more incentives at this stage of our growth. And that's what I recommend. Even if you give it a timeline, say, let's do it for 20 years, let's do it for 25 years. And after that, we can relook at it. Not that we're going to remove the incentives, but we can relook at them and see whether we maintain them at exactly the same level. My concern, of course, is our government is very, very good at discovering new areas to tax. Of course, you could also encourage. You could say, for example, we have a shortage of schools, and we really do in our country. good quality, high quality schools, you could say we will have a bigger exemption of certain taxes if you invest in your REIT in these particular areas. That means that government can channel development in the areas they want. What you see Akon do with student accommodation, I'm not sure government has acknowledged how much that has helped university education in the country. But what if there was an incentive for people who will go, say, to low-cost housing? So our government can say, what we really want to see developed is low-cost housing. So if you're coming to me, you want an exemption for stamp duty, for CGT, for low-cost housing specifically, then give that for now. So I think you can use tax and tax policy, fiscal policy, to actually influence where your rates can thrive a bit more. And because I've spoken for so long, I've forgotten my question.
Sorry, we want to come to the closing of this session, but Davina, we can't conclude this session without talking about cross-border because we have Pan-Africa conference, and I need to impress my other colleagues from Ghana and the rest of Africa. So Andrew, I hope you're still with us. I want to pose one question to both you and Peter, so you go first and Peter will go next because he has the opportunity to be in the room with everyone else. So I'll give you that advantage. So my question to you, Andrew, yesterday we were talking about the world population and how the Gen Zs are more than 60% of the population, and that they like transparency, they like innovation, and they like adaptability, and most importantly, trust. And we're talking about a real estate investment trust. So my question to you, Andrew and Peter, is what are the challenges that you probably have encountered or foresee during cross-border transactions, especially in REITs? And I'm tying it with what Peter said, that REIT in Kenya cannot invest outside of Kenya. And we're now with this generation that are looking at, there are no borders, they're borderless. So what are the challenges that you're experiencing and what are the mitigation? You can take those two questions and then Peter will come.
So three comments, Ruth. I mean, firstly, if there are prudential or other types of legal constraints on what pension funds in particular can invest in, then very often you do see in a number of African markets, you see prudential constraints on pension funds. They can invest in real estate, but it must be domestic real estate. So we've over the years sought to create a couple of Pan-African REITs, and we've gone and interfaced with pension funds in various parts of Africa, and they say, we love it, we'd love to buy it, but we can only buy real estate in the country. So firstly, the way in which pension funds, insurance companies, and other aggregators of capital are allowed to invest must be wide enough to acknowledge that cross-border, multi-market property businesses can be very successful. So secondly, when you operate in multiple markets, tax and different currencies can be very complex. The tax, you can suffer excessive forms of taxation when you generate cash flow in one market and flow it into another market for return to investors. So you've got to get sufficient tax efficiency, which requires a regional or international cooperation between the countries that are all taking their bite of tax out of the cash flows. And then thirdly is the practical constraint, and that is that real estate is very often all about location. You can buy a property on one side of the road and it's very successful, but if it had been on the other side of the road, it's not a good location. So you need very localized expertise and knowledge when you buy. And what I've seen over the years is when property people fly into a new country and seek to identify and buy real estate as visitors to the country, they're at high risk of getting it wrong. So if you are cross-border, if you are operating in multiple markets, you need local expertise to assist you in picking the best prospects, and that can be expensive. So what we've seen is the major deterrent to creating Pan-African REITs is the operating cost of doing so is high. and as a result, the net return to investors is not attractive. So those are the challenges. It ought to work, but it requires some reform, consistency, synchronization, and also it needs to be big enough that the costs of the platform can be spread over a large enough portfolio and become realistic. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. So as Peter is coming in, just prepare your parting shot for 1 minute, and please give us hope.
All right, as he prepares, the challenges about cross-border, there's that legal restriction, and as far as Kenya is concerned, 75% of your total assets must be in eligible property situated in Kenya. The other 25% can be in other liquid assets like money market instruments and so on. So for now, there is a legal constraint from Kenyan REITs investing REIT assets in any country outside Kenya. That is something that could be up for reform, or should be up for reform for us to look at. But I totally agree with what Andrew has said, that there can be capacity constraints, just local market knowledge, which is critical. But having said that, nothing stops a successful REIT in Kenya, say ILAM, say Econ, from setting up a REIT with all the experience and knowledge they have acquired in the local market in a different country and leveraging on capacities. Pretty much how we have countries having subsidiaries, companies having subsidiaries in different countries, but leveraging on the knowledge from the home office. Nothing stops us from doing that. So it's quite possible for Kenya to go to say Zim and set up a REIT with all the benefit of knowledge that they have. Use local knowledge, local due diligence, and so on and so on. But then we also need to look at the capital stack we talked about yesterday. Who is going to invest? Are you going to go with the investors from here? And yes, they allowed some offshore, but remember the offshore component is way less than the amount they're allowed to invest in Kenyan REITs. So there's still some capital that can follow a successful Kenyan REIT in a foreign REIT in a foreign market, but the capital available from the home stack will be much less.
Your parting shot, 1 minute.
I think, as I said, just to repeat, listing companies is extremely difficult, and Frank Mwiti will tell us that. If I can't remember the last time a new company listed on the stock. Track record, you need to grow a company, you need to start very far and grow the company over time. Jeff might remember. Now, listing a REIT is limitless. It does not take that long. It doesn't need to take 3 years, it doesn't need to take 2 years. You can actually decide now, November 1st, Kindiki REIT, you're going to list it, and in 6 months, you actually can be in market because you can start it anytime, anywhere, and actually create it. It's in our ability to dream, to see things as they ought to be, and ask why not? Why can't we have 6 listed REITs in the next 12 months? Why not? Why can't it be done? Who in the room is ready to say it cannot be done? It can be done because you just need to develop, like many other instruments in capital markets. We've got to appreciate companies are difficult to build. REITs are not difficult to build. And I can say that with authority. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew, for coming in. Davina, I don't know if we have a minute or two for questions from the floor.
We're going to have 2 questions, but Andrew, could you just give us your 1 minute recap?
I missed that, apologies.
Your closing remarks?
Sorry about that. I see a great deal of energy and enthusiasm, a lot of creation of REIT structures and thoughts about management models and how title is held, etc. The end, and all of that you have to get right, but in the end, the constitutional and governance and framework You need the basic tax dispensations that make it efficient. Shouldn't cost the government anything because the investors ultimately will pay the tax. And what you need is you need to find the real estate assets, whether it's conventional classes of real estate or the more newer forms of immovable property. You need to find those. You need to put them in the hands of the best management who can be attracted to it, and you need to create an investment product off it in the form of a REIT share or a REIT unit. Now, it's about, I think it's a big focus on the investment case and why that investment case is attractive relative to other places to put money. And I haven't had the privilege of being in the bulk of your conference, but for me, that's the conversation that needs real time and evaluation and the expertise of the audience.